You know, I've often walked down the street before.
But the pavement always stayed beneath my feet before.
All at once am I,
Several stories high, knowing I'm on the street where you live.
I have often walked down the street before, but the pavement always stayed beneath my feet before. All at once am I, several stories high, knowing I'm on the street.
So, Wimpole Street, a street like Harley Street, which runs parallel to it that way, known for medical practitioners and doctors.
and particularly today, dentists.
Oh, don't. I can feel my teeth hurting already. But we've not come here to talk about them, have we, Mark?
No, we haven't, Nick. Many famous people in the world of literature and popular music have worked and been inspired by the street. Some connected with the specialist treatments, still a hallmark of the street today. Here's a case in point, if you pardon the pun. Now, here practiced an
Eye doctor?
yeah, who was far better known for creating the greatest fictional detective ever.
Sherlock Holmes! And in 1891, he set up practice here as an
Eye doctor.
and I've got him here in a book saying, here we are, where is it? Every morning, I walked from my lodgings on Montague Place, reached my consulting room at 10, and sat there till 3 or 4, with never a ring to disturb my serenity. Could better conditions for reflection and work be found? As long as I was thoroughly unsuccessful in my professional venture, there was every chance of improvement in my literary prospects.
Well, what was eye doctoring's loss was crime fiction's gain, because here he wrote the first short stories, A Scandal in Bohemia and The Red-Headed League.
But he'd written the first one, A Study in Scarlet, back in 1887, hadn't he?
Yes, but it wasn't until the serialisation of the first 6 short stories that the character really captured the public imagination.
Yeah, he became so popular that Conan Doyle got fed up with him. Killed him off, didn't he? Falling over the Reichenbeck Falls in Switzerland with his, nemesis, Professor Moriarty. Hey, people actually wore black armbands in public to mourn the loss of the great detective, didn't they?
Yeah, he wanted people to concentrate on his lesser-known work, which he thought was better, but of course nothing could really compare with the popularity of Sherlock Holmes, so he resurrected the character 10 years later.
Yeah, apparently he'd not died. He'd chosen to remain incognito for 3 years because some of Moriarty's henchmen had seen him, in particular this Colonel chap, now involved in a murder in London that had prompted Holmes's return. Whew.
Well, a bit convoluted, yes, but he carried on writing the short stories until 1927, about 3 years before he died.
You know, so much for all this crime and intrigue. I'm in need of a bit of romance.
You want romance? Walk this way.
If I could walk that way, I wouldn't need talcum powder.
We'll stop and say they don't bother me, for there's nowhere else on earth that I would rather be.
How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth of height.
Get off! Now, we're actually in the main part of Wimpole Street now, outside number 50, the side of a house where from 1838 to 1846 lived Elizabeth Barrett, or Elizabeth Barrett Browning, as she became when she married fellow poet Robert Browning.
And the tyrannical old dad, as played by Charles Lawton in the movie The Barretts of Wimpole Street.
Yeah, she lived here from her early 30s with her father and 10 siblings, and by 1844 she'd already cemented her reputation as a great poet and gained a fan in fellow poet Robert Browning.
She was pretty incredible, wasn't she? Prolific writer, making a name in poetry when women just couldn't. And she wasn't afraid to speak out against the slavery on which her family's fortune had been founded. She was even nominated for Poet Laureate, wasn't she? But Tennyson got it instead.
Yep.
All while battling with debilitating illness.
And it was in these rooms here that she first met Robert Browning, who sent her a fan letter. and so developed one of the greatest romances in the history of literature, much against her father's wishes. And they secretly got married at the church at the end of the road, St Marylebone, which figures in our Scrooge Locations film, which you can see on this channel, and then they eloped together to Italy.
Grow old along with me. The best is yet to be.
Yes,
The
thank you.
But John and Yoko saw themselves as reincarnations of the couple. John's last gift to Yoko was one of Elizabeth's handwritten letters. And you know, originally I think they were going to have themselves dressed up as the Brownings on the front cover of the Double Fantasy album. John as Elizabeth.
You want Beatles? I'll show you Beatles.
Oh.
This was the home of Dr. Richard Asher and his wife Margaret, and this is where Paul lived with Jane. Right up there his room was, in the attic, on the top floor, and that's where he dreamt yesterday.
So we're outside number 57 Wimpole Street, home of the Asher family. And now Dr. Richard Asher was an eminent doctor who specialised in mental health. And his wife Margaret was a professor of music at the Guildhall School of Music, who taught the young George Martin how to play the oboe. And they lived here at number 57 with their children, Claire and Jane, both actresses, and Peter, a singer.
Oh, gorgeous redhead Jane Asher, who was an Alfie. And of course, most famously, Paul McCartney's girlfriend and fiancée throughout a lot of the swinging 60s, wasn't she?
Yeah.
And Peter and Gordon had that hit with Paul McCartney wrote it, didn't he? A World Without Love. Please lock me away.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, Paul was a regular visitor here after he first started dating Jane in 1963, and eventually moved into the top floor bedroom around the back, apparently. And he wrote several Beatles songs here, most famously Yesterday.
Scrambled eggs, oh my baby, how I love your legs.
Yeah, well, he often likes to tell he woke one morning with the melody in his head, and he worked out the chords on the piano, and he thought he'd heard it from somewhere else before, but of course he hadn't.
He'd actually written one of the most famous, one of those covered songs ever in his sleep. It's incredible, isn't it?
Over 1,000 recordings of it. But there were other songs that Paul wrote here. Well, when he first moved in 1963, he and John wrote their first American #1 here, I Want to Hold Your Hand.
I can't hide, I get high, I get high. Bob Dylan thought they were singing I Get High when it was really I Can't Hide, wasn't it?
They would write together in the music room in the basement where Mrs. Asher taught oboe. And it very much took over from Paul's Liverpool childhood home for their writing base. And they got on very well, actually, Paul, with the Asher family. Mrs. Asher offered to teach him to read music, but he still can't read music to this day. Mr. Asher, he worked out an escape route for Paul to escape the many fans camped out on the doorstep.
Oh yes, I read about this. From the upstairs bedroom, he'd climb along the very top parapet into the house next door, number 56 of a retired colonel, and then he'd work his way down the house into the basement where there was a young couple, and then through their garage to the rear on Browning Mews.
Sounds like a spy film.
So are you Beatles fans then? Or
No,
Not especially.
we're just on a historical tour around the area.
Little guidebook, yeah.
Yeah,
It's great,
nice.
Wimpole Street, isn't it?
It
is,
We found it one of the best streets for the most famous people living on it. And of course, Paul McCartney's house.
Yeah.
You hear about the escape route that he did? He
Yes,
used to from the
yes.
upstairs
And the neighbours.
down to the Browning Mews to the rear.
Yeah.
Go down around the Mews. Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
To escape all the fans on the doorstep. These must have been the garage doors that Paul made his getaway from.
Yeah, they look pretty old, don't they? It sounds like a spy film, doesn't it?
Talking of spies, aren't we very near to the location where the incident that provoked the Profumo affair?
Yeah, Wimpole Mews, adjacent to the other side. The scandal, which some say lit the touchpad for the swinging 60s.
I wonder if Dr. and Mrs. Asher heard those shots and then knew that they'd be living alongside somebody who'd be such a big part of the swinging 60s.
What was that, dear? That darling with the shots to start the swinging 60s. Was it indeed? A bit too late for me.
Oh, the lilac trees in the heart of town. Can you hear a lark in any other part of town?
Now, we're outside number 17 Wimpole Mews, home of Dr. Stephen Ward, osteopath and socialite. He was very well connected, and he knew a lot of society people. And he'd met Christine Keeler and Manuel Rice Davis and was very taken with them. And he let them stay here at number 17. Then one day, the peace of the area was disturbed in 1962 when one of Christine Keeler's ex-lovers, Johnny Edgecombe,
as played by Roland Gift from Fine Young Cannibals in the movie Scandal.
Johnny, we're sorry.
Yeah, thank you,
Won't
thank
you
you,
come on
thank you, thank you.
home?
Yes,
Oh, Johnny,
thank you.
What is wrong?
Johnny Edgecombe, he fired several shots into the door and so alerted the press, and the affair between John Profumo and Christine Keeler and also Major Ivanov, who was the Russian naval attaché and spy, was exposed. And cue all the solid details in the press, the persecution of Christine Keeler and Stephen Ward, and before the verdict, the suicide of Stephen Ward.
Oh, John Hurt was amazing as Stephen Ward, wasn't he, in the movie Scandal? Remember that scene where he's explained to Christine that he'll probably be made the scapegoat again, just like he was back in school. Someone had to have a thrashing, Ward. It happened to be you.
I know, it's not fair. It's not fair. Funny enough,
It's Johnny.
funny enough, it's another John Hurt movie in which he was Oscar nominated that's key to our next port of call in Wimpole Street.
Let's follow Johnny. I'm sorry.
So, we're outside number 6 Wimpole Street, home of Dr. Frederick Trees, who was a Harley Street surgeon and a pioneer in appendix surgery. And he counted King Edward VII among his patients. In fact, he almost certainly saved King Edward's life when, before the coronation in 1902, he was diagnosed with appendicitis. In those days, at a high mortality rate, and was rarely treated operatively. But Dr. Trees insisted, otherwise he said he'd be going to a funeral and not a coronation. And he was the operation went ahead on a billiard table in Buckingham Palace.
I hope they took the balls off.
I don't think it went as far as that. Anyway, the operation was a success, and the coronation was only delayed for a couple of months.
And he became friends with the Elephant Man.
Yeah, Joseph Merrick, yeah.
It was Joseph Merrick, wasn't it? Not John, as they say in the movie.
But it was mistakenly called John in an early memoir. But it was Dr. Trees who actually rescued Joseph Merrick from a shop or a penny gaff where he was being exhibited as a freak, which was opposite the Royal London Hospital, where Trees worked in Whitechapel. And then he took him back to the hospital and gave him a home there, and Merrick died there in 1890.
He became very good friends, didn't he, with Trees, and he even brought him back to meet his wife here. Yeah. Oh, he was very sensitively played, wasn't he, by Anthony Hopkins in the movie The Elephant Man.
Yeah. In fact, funny enough, Frederick Trees, he was in a film himself, playing himself and others, helping the war effort in the now lost silent movie by D.W. Griffiths called The Great Love. That was in 1918.
But John Merrick was, John Hurt rather was great as John Merrick too, wasn't he, in the movie? But I think to most people's ears, John Merrick would have been unintelligible. I think only Treves had an understanding of him. Yeah,
I don't think even the great Henry Higgins, Professor Higgins, could help Merrick with his speech.
By George, you've got it!
The bird in Spain stays ready to play, Dr. Treves.
I'm sorry about this, everybody, I really am. Come on.
And oh, the towering feeling, just to know somehow you are near.
So, number 27, the most famous, albeit fictional, address on Wimpole Street, isn't it?
Well, partly fictional, yes. In George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, which was written in 1912, the home of phonetics professor Henry Higgins is given as 27A Wimpole Street, with the laboratory being in the former drawing room overlooking the street. But in actual fact, the original occupier at number 27 was a linguist called Horace Wilson, although the character of Henry Higgins was based on an Oxford phonetics teacher called Henry Sweet.
Everyone remembers better though, don't they? The brilliant musical by Lerner and Lowe, My Fair Lady, which I think still had Higgins living at number 27.
Yeah, Lerner and Lowe very much based their musical on the 1938 film Pygmalion, starring Leslie Howard, co-written by George Bernard Shaw. That was the first time the famous pronunciation exercises were first used, because they weren't in the original play.
In Hertfordshire, Herefordshire, and Hampshire, hurricanes hardly ever happened.
The rain in Spain stays mainly in the play, Dr. Trees.
Do you remember that story, that great story that when Pygmalion premiered, Shaw, who detested Churchill, sent him tickets for the first night with a message saying, bring a friend if you have one. But Churchill, not to be outdone with witticisms, replied, I'm sorry I can't make it along to the first night. I'll try and make it along to the second night, if there is one.
Yeah, you know, in the original London production in 1914, the part of Henry Higgins was played by Herbert Beerbohm Tree. Now, he was a guy who founded RADA, you know, the drama school.
Yeah.
And the 1956 musical was the longest running show on Broadway at that time. It ran 6 years and won 6 Tony Awards. And it nearly ran as long in the West End in London as well.
I think a drink. You know, it was lovely.
Friendly, wasn't it? The Hitchcock.
It wasn't the last Hitchcock.
No, the penultimate one, wasn't it? I think it was Family Plot was the last one.
Mark, I know you like your connections, so here's one for you. Who or what links where we first started on Wimpole Street at Conan Doyle's practice with where we finished at Henry Higgins's?
Jeremy Brett.
You know that.
But he famously played Sherlock Holmes in the TV series. And
brilliantly too, wasn't he?
Brilliantly, yeah. And in the 1964 movie of My Fair Lady, he played Freddie Eynsford Hill. He was a posh gent who was obsessed with Eliza. And of course he sang the song On the Street Where You Live.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
I have often stopped down the street before, but the pavement always stable.
He didn't stalk
He was
her.
stalking her, come on.
He loved her.
No bones about it.
He loved her.
He'd have a court injunction against him these days, I tell you.
I suppose he did stalk her a bit.
A bit. Here's a poser for you, yeah? What number in Wimpole Street, okay, was responsible for the 999 emergency call?
99?
27.
What we were?
It was in 1935, there was a fire at number 27, and a neighbour opposite phoned the fire brigade. And in those days, there was no emergency call, and all the calls were stacked up in a queue, no matter how important or unimportant they were. And consequently, the fire brigade was late. And the neighbour, he was so annoyed by this that he wrote a letter to the Times. And as a consequence of that, questions were asked in the House of Commons, and because of that, there was the instigation of the 999 emergency call.
Ah. Doesn't Colonel Pickering, played by Wilfred Hyde-White in the movie, doesn't he ring the police about something?
Yeah, but it wouldn't be 999 in those days. Yeah, because Elijah had gone missing, and he phoned the police to say there's 2 old gents looking for an 18-year-old girl, and they got the wrong end of the stick, you know, the right end of the stick.
Ooh, not very appropriate. Mark, cheers for suggesting Wimpole Street. It's a great street.
It's one of the best, isn't it?
The best, yeah. And Pete, mate, thanks for filming.
Cheers, Pete.
Brilliantly too.
You're welcome.
Oh, and thank you for watching it, yeah?
Yeah. If you enjoyed the film, do hit the like button and subscribe to our channel.
Yeah, or if we know you're out there, we'll do more of these. So it's most important that as well as you like, you subscribe to the channel, please. Mark, I think we should finish with a song, don't you?
Why not?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
All I want is a room somewhere far away from the cold night air, with one enormous chair. Oh, wouldn't it be lovely, lovely, lovely,
Lovely.
lovely, lovely,
Lovely. Cheers.
Cheers.